Okay, I feel better. That worked. That worked. I've done a few of these, but that one really worked. Congratulations, everyone. Okay, so that was 25 minutes. Gone just like that. But a good way to spend it. So tonight I was going to have a short discussion on right livelihood, which is one of the facets of the Noble Eightfold Path. I don't think it gets much treatment by the monks, mainly because I guess they're in the ultimate livelihood, so no need to talk about it a whole lot. And it doesn't get a great treatment in the suttas, I guess because it's fairly straightforward. So I went through the Anagutya Nikaya a few days ago when Dennis told me I'd be doing a talk, and that's one of my favourite books in the Pali canon. It's something like 60% of it is practical advice on living life in short analogies, and there's lots and lots of talks by the Buddha to lay people on how you can have a better life and strive for some spiritual development. He was a very practical-minded guy, the Buddha, and reading through the suttas, he basically says that as a layperson running a household, you can only really go about 3/4 of the way to full spiritual development. I think here he's talking about the 4 classic stages of enlightenment in Buddhism, which is a stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, and full arahant. And it seems that the Buddha's saying that really as a lay householder, maximum you're going to get to non-returner. And if you somehow manage to get there, to go any further, you either have to die and go to another abode or become a monastic. So I never really believed this when I first turned up in Buddhism, because I just felt that, you're being denied, that's not fair, I want to go all the way. But now that I'm a middle-aged family man, I can see that he was right. Running a household and a family and whatever work or business that you do, it's pretty hard, I think, to attain very lofty goals of spiritual advancement in the short lifespans that we have. And I have an appreciation now for why in the monastic world you could make great advances, and in the lay world there's a bit of a handicap. But the truth is that most people can't be monastics, and I'm certain that the statistic is that only something like 0.3% of monks who ordain spend their whole life as a monk. So there's challenges for everyone. So the Buddha gave quite a bit of advice on how to live a good lay life, and at least get to sort of the first or second spiritual advancements of at least a stream enterer, and perhaps even a once returner. And actually, if you could do that, I think you'd be doing well. Knowing what I know now, if I could achieve something like that, I'd be pretty stoked when I'm dying. I think that'd be good. So I've just written some notes here from my readings, and as far as the layman goes, the right livelihood, I think it's the 5th part of the Eightfold Noble Path, is really solely directed at the lay people. And it's nice that the Buddha did put something in for really what is the majority of Buddhists. And in case you didn't know, Right Livelihood has five no-go areas. So he said that you weren't allowed to trade weapons, so I guess you can't be an arms dealer. And you can see why this is so, because if you could sum up Buddhism in one way, you could say don't do harm to others and yourself. So obviously, if you're trading in weapons, then you're potentially giving someone the tools to harm others. Slavery, you're not allowed to deal in human beings, or in today's terms, human trafficking, which is interesting because in the Buddha's day, in many of the suttas, including the ones addressed to lay people about having harmonious households, he talks about if you acquire wealth and do well, that you have to look after yourself, make sure that your wife, or in these today it could be your husband, are looked after, your children are looked after, and your slaves are looked after. So he didn't try and convert people not to have slaves, but he was at least saying, don't be involved in that trade. Not to be involved in the trade of meat. So the Buddha did eat meat. Many times people say to me, "Oh, you're into Buddhism, you must be a vegetarian." And then I say, no, the Buddha died eating meat. So if you didn't know, the Buddha died eating a pork curry. However, he said that trading in meat is obviously not something that you should do because of the harm that can be inflicted on beings. No involvement or trading in intoxicants, so I guess that's alcohol and drugs. And finally, no trading in poisons. Again, that's to do with the harm that can occur to other people. These 5 things, they could become a discussion in themselves. And I've often thought about, in particular, the trading in meat. The first thing that springs to my mind is, that means that you can't be a butcher. And I don't know. I know some good butchers, like they're just decent people that ended up in that trade and probably didn't even really think about it. So, unfortunately, what does that mean? What does that mean for them? Poisons, well, obviously, being a pest control is off the menu. But then the Buddhist Society has used pest controllers. So the monks at Bodhinyana Monastery have, on occasion, called in pest controllers to exterminate. I'm pretty sure they had a rat and a cockroach problem on different occasions. So, I guess the Buddha's saying that you should steer away from these professions, even if on occasion you have to use them. In my travels, I often also get the second question I get if someone finds that I'm involved in Buddhism after, "Oh, you must be a vegetarian," is, "Oh, you must be a pacifist and against the military." So for the record, I'm an ex-military officer, and no, I'm not. I think that these things are necessary, and the Buddha. He hasn't listed the military as off limits in the livelihoods that you shouldn't engage in, and in fact, in many suttas, he gives plenty of analogies that include the military. That they tend to talk about in the suttas, like the king's men or the archers and whatever else. So I guess he saw that as a practical, necessary thing, and a lot of the time people can get conscripted into those outfits, and they don't have a choice. So the Buddha, in talking about right livelihood and the wrong livelihoods to stay away from, he said that that laymen, and today that this would apply to laywomen as well, so I'm not being sexist, but I'm just using the terminology they use out of habit, that laymen should earn a living vigorously and through the sweat of their arms, supporting their family, and then leaving room for spiritual advancement. Another thing that I come across, comment I come across is people say, oh, you're into Buddhism. I bet you can't wait to retire early and then just meditate all day and carry on the rest of it. And I'd say no, I'd go crazy with myself all day. Even some of the monks have a hard time doing that all day, and they leave the monastery and go back into lay life. And I think that the Buddha recognised that people are at different levels of spiritual knowledge and aptitude, and actually working correctly, diligently in the community, generating wealth for your family and community, and the aesthetics is just part of a stable, social, functioning society. And I remember in one of the suttas, some wandering ascetic said to him, I've come from this particular region, and there's a lot of violence and thievery and thuggery and problems going on. And how, what do we do about it? What's the Buddha's answer? And he said that the reason they're misbehaving in this place is because they're not being ruled correctly by their king or whatever it was. And effectively there wasn't full employment, and people were having to stoop to antisocial behaviour just to get by. So 2,500 years ago, the Buddhism was a proponent of full employment and people being, I guess, put to work. He then talks about lay people, once you're in the right livelihood and you've established that you're going to be working, that when you are working, there's 5 things that you should be mindful of and developing when you're in this way. And first of all, that's faith in the Dharma, learning of the Dharma, that's to back up the faith, the cultivation of virtue, the cultivation of generosity. So in particular, in a number of suttas, he talks about when you have generated wealth, making sure that you give back to the community, not only your family, not only the monks, but just the community in general. And then also the cultivation of wisdom. And if you cultivate these 5 things, so faith, virtue, learning, generosity, and wisdom in your lay life as you're working in the right livelihood, this is a sort of a step-by-step gradual approach to developing spirituality. So then he goes on. I've just got a few bits and pieces I wrote down here from the Anagutri Nikaya. So this one's for Book of Fours, number 62. And he talks about you're in the right livelihood, you're earning through the sweat of your brow. What are 4 things that you should do with your income? And he says the first thing you should do is spend some money on yourself. Take a portion aside and spend it on yourself for some worldly happiness. So I guess that he realised, or he knew, that if you're living in the lay life, this is the world that's conditioning you, and there are going to be things that make you happy. And what's the point of going out and earning all this cash or coins or whatever if you're not going to enjoy a little bit on yourself? So the first thing is spend money on you, then spend it on the furbishment of your family. The second thing is that he says that you should put some money aside for insurance. So he says that the things you need to insure against is fire, flood, theft, and overtaxing kings. So except for the last one, this sounds like an ad for the RAC. I'm going to take out a policy for fire, flood, and theft. Pardon me, I'm getting over a cold, but I'm not infectious. And even in his day, the Buddha recognised that the government takes too much, basically, overtaxing kings. The third use of money in the Book of Fours, number 62, was that a portion of your money should be used for charitable donations, and that still stands today. And then the 5th thing is the support of aesthetics down in your local monastery. And then he talks about in the same book of fours, the four reasons that being in the right livelihood and earning money can keep you happy, and the first one was enjoyment and relaxation. The second one was he advocated a debt-free life. He said that working with the sweat of your brow and honestly and being debt-free was a source of worldly material happiness. He also talked about the third was a guilt-free acquisition of wealth. And then the fourth source of happiness from your income was the joy from giving back to the community. So that all pretty much still stands for today. He then goes on to talk about in the lay world, what are the four things most commonly wished for, and I can't believe it. It's 2,500 years ago, and it still stands. So the first thing that lay people wish for is gaining wealth. The second thing is respect and acclaim amongst their peers. The third thing is a long life. And the fourth thing is a fortunate death. Surely, like, all of us would consider those as, besides Buddhism and spiritual development back in the lay material world, surely being financially independent, being respected by our peers, living a long life and having a nice peaceful death would all be top of our minds. I love it. I love it. There's a few other passages where he expands on this, in regards to right livelihood, he gives three behaviours that you should engage in, and it sounds like my dad when I was a teenager. He says you should have energetic striving and get up early. This is the Buddha. You know, all the stuff we hear from Ajahn Brahm and the monks and all that learning, and it's all correct, but it's also refreshing and interesting to see that the Buddha is talking about such material things and giving such practical advice, and I think that it makes him real, that he can be pitching to so many levels and recognising that different people have different aptitudes and they're at a different point on the spiritual path, and a lot of people are probably just out there. They're good people, they're trying the best they can, and really they can't put too much focus properly onto spirituality until they've got their finances and household and all the rest of it under control, and they're not sitting on the cushion going, oh my God, I'm trying to calm my mind, but my house just burnt down yesterday, what am I doing here? It's very, very good. So he talks about energetic striving, and he talks about the strength of your own endeavour, basically almost dictating your success to a degree. There are passages where he talks about so this businessman comes and sees him. I can't exactly remember what it is. It's in this same book. Is it a businessman or is it a monk? It's one of them. And he says, "Oh, how come some people go into ventures and no matter how hard they try, it doesn't work out? And some people go in and the venture works out halfway, and other people don't even try at all, and they do quite well." And the Buddha, in a condensed version, basically says it comes down to karma and the actions of their last lifetime. And the summary is that the more generous the person was in their last life in regards to giving to the community and treating their family well and supporting the monastics in their quest, that sort of generous correct targeted giving in previous lives is bearing fruit in their current life, and I think I believe that. So I'm in the business world, and I've been running my own firm for about 11 or 12 years now, and it just bewilders me, the apparent randomness of success or not in the time I've been in this business. So now my business is doing quite well, and I'm quite happy with it. But along the way, there's just been these random encounters where we weren't even expecting it, and someone comes out of the blue and goes, "Oh, by the way, can you do this and this and this for us?" We go, "Oh yeah, okay, that'll be hard. It's going to cost you a lot of money." And then they agree to it, and then it works, and you just think, well, where did that come from? And then on other, for years and years, on other products, we've hammered and knocked on doors and been to conferences and done demos and hounded people and got nothing, just wasted time and energy again and again and again. And then sometimes, on a few occasions, chance encounters with people on the street outside of the business when you go, "Oh, I do this and this and this. Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, my uncle does this. Oh, you should give him a call." And boom, it turns into something. And is there really randomized luck in life, or is it a karma thing? Like, what's the cause and effect? And so I can definitely say, in my experience anyway, my short experience in the business world, there is a lucky time and place element to it being successful, and the Buddha puts this basically down to past lives, generosity, and that karma coming back through. He expands on it a bit more, because there's a woman that comes and sees him and says, "Oh, how come some women are born beautiful and some aren't, and how can I be born beautiful again?" And he gives the explanation that the beautiful women, and I guess these days you could say men, but he was talking to a woman and she was asking the question, the most beautiful women were the most generous and kind-hearted women last lifetime, and you're seeing a physical manifestation of that karma. And in regards to the women she asked about who weren't so attractive or beautiful, he said along the lines that in those last lifetimes they might have been a bit more miserly and I don't know, cruel or angry. No, angry. It was yeah, that's right. So the more angry they were in the next life, that again was expressed as a physical manifestation, which I find quite interesting. So that was my short talk on right livelihood, and I hope maybe that it's generated some questions and maybe generated some interest in that. And there's plenty more of it in the Anaguchya and Nikaya. And generally, it's in the Book of Fours. He talks a lot about right livelihood. So it's now 10 to 8, and I was just going to open the floor up for 10 minutes, and we can take questions from the floor on right livelihood and its implications, or any experience you have or thoughts you have, especially on the 5 areas the Buddha said to stay away from. We can also take some questions from online, and if there's not much to ask about right livelihood, because it seems quite straightforward, then I'm happy to have questions or a discussion on anything really in Buddhism that you might be thinking about at the moment. With the caveat that I don't consider myself a Buddhist teacher. I'm just a guest speaker here. So really, we're all peers. Thanks. So, does anyone have anything from the floor at all? There must be something. Oh, here comes the speaker, Ron.
I guess in terms of how far a household might progress, I wonder if the Buddha takes into account times are very different. Retirement, where people now have often 20 years or so, where they choose their own way of life to quite an extent.
Yes, I've considered this as well. So the Buddha lived till 83, and so he would have been aware that even in those days, especially with physical work that the men did, in particular in the fields and whatever, that by the time they're 65, their bodies are worn out. I don't know if it was unusual for him to live that long, and yeah, definitely we know there's more people living well into retirement these days. I suppose so. I mean, you'd have to do the work though for years beforehand while you're working. You'd have to, while you're doing the family business thing or whatever it is that takes up your time, you'd have to be coming to the monastery and doing the meditation and sort of building that appetite. It'd be pretty difficult, I imagine, just to work your guts out, get to 65 and go, right, I'm ready for Buddhism. Clear the decks. I'm going for it. I'm going to stream enter in the next 20 years. I know in the Indian traditions of, well, particularly in the Hindu tradition, they actively sort of encourage a person on retirement to really get into spirituality and devote a lot of time, to the temple. And in fact, there's plenty of historical figures where kings have, in Hindu-type India, have stepped down from the throne, handed it over to the prince, and then gone into robes. So, fingers crossed. I'm hoping when I retire at 65, I get another 20 years and can go for it. Although I suppose, I mean, you don't know if you're going to get the time. I remember when I was in the in the Navy, there was a warrant officer who, after 42 years or something, was forced into retirement, and he died at midnight on the day he was discharged. It was such a thing, an identity. What do I do with my life? He had done obviously no preparation for the last part of his life, and I remember at the time that it wasn't the first occasion that this had happened. You know, other people in the Navy had said, "Oh yeah, what about blah 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 X years ago?" So yeah, hopefully in retirement. Well, you would know, Ron. You're there now, aren't you? Is it working for you? We can only hope. And one thing about really reading the sutras and getting into Buddhism is in the early days you come in and you go, right, that's it. I've seen that Ajahn Brahm guy. He's great. He must be enlightened. I'm getting enlightened. I'm gonna do it by the time I'm 40 and I'll be sorted, and then I'll have the next mission. And then you realise what a grinding, slow drag it is. And you read the sutras and the Buddha talks about lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes, and suddenly, like, you look at your own progress in a short amount of time and you might sort of be happy with it, and then you think, oh my God, there's so long to go. Or actually, maybe it does take lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes. So anyway, there's nothing else to do, so I guess you just get on with it. I've got a couple of questions here on the internet, but was there anything else from the floor? Or I can jump into an internet question, and if you think of something, please feel free to ask. Okay, so Kanal Singh. Hello, Kanal. I can't assume, you might be from India. relating from his talk, Ajahn Brahm has mentioned to live a life with suffering. He himself has learnt to live with pain. How do you live with it, the suffering thing? You don't get a choice. Suffering just turns up. I think suffering is probably a word that's used a little bit too heavily in the Western translations of Buddhism. So you've got the Four Noble Truths, and no, don't get caught out here. So the first noble truth is that classically it says there is suffering, and then the cause of suffering is attachment to things or craving. And then the third noble truth is that there's a way out of suffering, and the fourth noble truth is work on the Eightfold Path, and these factors will take you out. But maybe instead of suffering, it could be better interpreted as discontent, because whenever you talk about the Four Noble Truths and you go suffering, it's like, oh God, it's so bad. Certainly life can be difficult, but maybe the term suffering's a bit strong. And life waxes and wanes, and sometimes it's quite difficult, and other times, for brief periods, you have an easier time. So how do you live with the suffering thing? Well, you accept it, just like when you're meditating, and we did that sweeping meditation before, and you might find some tension in your stomach or chest or something that you're holding from the day, and then just acknowledging and being with that tightness or tension in the meditation, hopefully you can feel that there is a slight relaxation. So I suppose acknowledging something is the first part of getting into solving a problem. But unfortunately, it's just always going to be there. Old age, sickness and death. That's really what it's about. And you can take a couple of routes. You can try and go the material, everyday route and get rich and get yourself involved in a lot of sensual pleasures and maybe medicate out of it. You can come down to the Buddhist hall and get into philosophy and meditation, and maybe that will relieve a bit of suffering. It tends to be, I think, that the more of the bigger picture you see, the more you can put the current situation into context, and that in itself can lessen suffering, because you say, oh, okay, well, it's just for this short time now, and it's for this reason, and most other people do get through whatever it is that's going on, the loss of a parent or something. Eventually, time moves on, and people do recover. So Kanal, I'd keep meditating, keep reading philosophy, keep trying to expand your worldview. Basically, I'm talking about increasing wisdom, and that's the name of the game in Buddhism. The second question is from Christy. My question would be about working as a lawyer or judge in the law. How could I make sure I respect what the Buddha would want? Actually, the Buddha didn't want anything. He wanted to get out of here. He didn't like it. So the Buddha I imagine, would say, don't worry about what I want. Worry about developing your spirituality. And it doesn't matter if you're a lawyer or an accountant or a bricklayer or whatever. The Buddhist philosophy is basically no harm, and if you're not trading weapons and slaves and drugs and poisons, you're off to a good start. And I don't think being a lawyer falls into any of those categories, so you're okay there. And just behave as a good person. I don't know. Don't rip people off. Don't overcharge your clients. Be truthful in the court. And again, I sound like a walking encyclopedia of the suttas, but I do like reading them because of Buddhism, but also because, especially in the Anagutara Nikaya, there's thousands of stories in there. And you can just flip one open and read something, and it just gives you this fascinating insight into Bronze Age India. And there'll be some sort of Buddhist teaching in there, but then they'll talk about like how they construct the wheel on a cart or something, or strap up a horse. And, that's interesting. Just don't go out and harm people, and tell the truth. And in that, I think it's the Anagutara Nikaya, some guy is going to court, or he's in trouble or something, and he's going to see a magistrate, and the Buddha's saying that when you're in a court, or whatever the term he was using is, I can't quite remember. Always tell the truth. One of the behavioural principles is don't lie in the court, and if you do see something and the court asks you about it, don't hold it back, and allow civil society justice to take its course. So the legal fraternity does get a mention in ancient Buddhism, and Christy, I would say, just be an honest person. Obviously, you're going to have to watch yourself in the legal world because it's pretty cutthroat out there. But if you're not ripping people off, and you're telling the truth, and you're just working correctly and fulfilling the duties that you're paid to do to the best you can, it's all okay. That's going to work. You don't have to worry about your career or any problems that will cause you. You can maybe just focus on other parts of Buddhism, like how do I increase my spiritual knowledge, or wisdom. And those things I talked about before with the Buddha in regards to where he says the layperson has to develop. He's talking about faith, virtue, learning, generosity, and then wisdom. So it's sort of a bit like the Eightfold Path, where he puts right view first, and then it all leads up to right samadhi or meditation. In what the layperson needs to develop, he's building it up, and then the last thing is wisdom. So if you've got faith, virtue, learning, and generosity, especially learning, that is going to enable you to develop wisdom, which is the name of the game in Buddhism. And a lot of people think that meditation is the name of the game in Buddhism, but it's not. It's wisdom, or insight. That's what it is. Meditation is a tool to help you get there, but we're not here being Buddhists because we want to be good meditators. We're here being Buddhists because we want to develop wisdom, and wisdom leads to spiritual development, and then spiritual development at its highest level hopefully leads to a release from suffering. I hope that answers your question, Christy. Thanks for asking. Any more from the floor? Okay, all right.
What about a judge?
A judge?
A judge, yeah, if you're just following on from that. When a judge is making judgments on people.
I think there's two levels to it. First of all, we're all flawed, and we get things wrong occasionally. And I think it would be quite stressful being a judge, and not trying to get things wrong, and really just like the lawyer, doing their jobs correctly, being impartial is important. But I think judges, like the Buddha, he was particularly harsh. Probably one of his number one bones of contention were monks who were fraudulent, because he could see that would decrease faith in the Sangha, and destabilise and bring down the whole system, so to speak. And in the suttas, he talks about the various very bad ends that happen to monks who are getting involved in this just to benefit or have an occupation or whatever else. And I think judges also, if they were corrupt, and maybe not in Australia, but you can imagine other countries, Afghanistan maybe, where the system's rigged and they're taking money and they're sending innocent people to jail. There'd have to be some pretty bad karma points being earned there. So yeah, you'd want to be pretty careful as a judge. But again, in Buddhism, if you're acting morally, you're not out intentionally to harm anyone, you're going to be okay in your career. And that's one of the things to consider as well, as people say, as a Buddhist, when you walk down the footpath, you've got to make sure that you dodge every single ant and not bring harm to any life. True, you have to be mindful, but that's also impractical, and people get worried when they accidentally run over a dog or a cat or a bird or something like that, and they think, oh my God, I've killed this animal, I've broken one of the first precept, thou shalt not kill, I'm gone. But it has to be intentional. The killing or the misbehaviour has to be intentional, because we all make mistakes, and seemingly there is a bit of random luck out there. So people shouldn't be too worried about that. Okay, alrighty. That's 7 minutes past 8. I hope that the meditation was good and the talk was informative. And I think that we'll wrap it up there. We might head over to the tea area for a tea before we lock up. So please come over and say hello. And thanks, Dennis, for inviting me in. And again, Dennis has got his talk on Friday night. I'm going to have to turn up for it now. Is enlightenment suicide? That should be an interesting one. So I'm not going to do any chanting because I'm not really that good at it. I might just turn around and pay respects to the Buddha Dharma Sangha with 3 bows. Thank you.